Okay, good morning, everybody. Today I would like to talk a little bit about kindness, and yeah, kindness to start off. Um, I'm one thing that attracts me to Buddhism is the elegant simplicity of it, which is good for me, being a very simple-minded person. And we can distill a lot of this to just being kind. And here are a few quotes that kind of illustrate that. Um, a Buddhist author by the name of Mathieu Ricard asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama, saying, "I'm going to a retreat. What is your advice?" And the Dalai Lama said to him, "In the beginning, meditate on compassion. In the middle, meditate on compassion. And in the end, meditate on compassion." The Dalai Lama is also famous for having said, "My religion is very simple. My religion is kindness." That's probably one of his most famous quotes. Um, and he also is famous for having said, "If you want to be wisely selfish, care for others." So kindness, compassion, metta, all very foundational to Buddhism. Um, but that's nothing unique to Buddhism. It's also foundational for many religions. One of my favorite quotes in the Jewish tradition is from Rabbi Hillel. "That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow." The golden rule. That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Or in Proverbs, a man who is kind to himself a man who is kind benefits himself, but a cruel man hurts himself. And then Rumi is one of his quotes is, "When we practice loving kindness and compassion, we are the first ones to profit." And in the Quran, it says, "The Prophet said, Allah is kind and he loves kindness in all matters." So clearly kindness is foundational to so many faiths. Um, which brings me to something that confused me for quite a while, and that is our beloved Heart Sutra, which is often referenced as one of the most beloved sutras, particularly for Mahayana Buddhism. Interestingly, this Heart Sutra doesn't make mention of compassion at all. It talks of wisdom and emptiness and so on, but doesn't really reference compassion. And yet, this is the most beloved of the Mahayana Buddhisms, according to some. And it's often explained that the speaker of in this wonderful short sutra is Avalokiteshvara, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion, who looks down upon the world and hears the cries of all people suffering in samsara. And that by association, that's why the Heart Sutra is really fundamentally about compassion as well. But the connection is a little bit of a stretch in for me at any rate. So that's something that's just kind of I've been curious about through the years. Interestingly, the Four Noble Truths doesn't explicitly mention compassion, nor the Noble Eightfold Path doesn't explicitly mention compassion. Um, so you take all that together, and some years ago, a question just popped into my head out of the blue. I don't know where this came from, but I was just wondering to myself, what is the relationship between wisdom and compassion? Because certainly the Heart Sutra, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path do speak very explicitly about wisdom. So I got wondering, wisdom, compassion, what's the relationship? Are they two sides of the same coin. What is the relationship between them? And I don't pretend to have the answer to that. So this Dharma talk is perhaps more to leave you with a question than an answer. But I must admit, I as I was thinking about this morning's Dharma talk, I got curious, and so I fired up Gemini, which is Google's AI, and asked the almighty Google about this. And interesting how little I found, but there were a few little snippets. Shantideva wrote a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, in which he says the cultivation of bodhicitta, and bodhicitta is that aspiration for enlightenment for the sake of ourselves and all beings. The cultivation of bodhicitta, which is the perfect fusion of wisdom and compassion to liberate all suffering. So the bodhicitta, aspiration is this fusion of wisdom and compassion. So, again, talking a little bit about the relationship between wisdom and suffering, but interesting that doesn't, nothing in the sutras that I could find explicitly talks about that. There is a saying that you will hear sometimes is, and this does not come from a sutra. This is a Buddhist quote that or saying that is popular, but not necessarily attributable to any particular sutra. Just as a bird needs two wings to fly, a practitioner needs both wisdom and compassion to reach enlightenment. So, okay, a little bit more about the interrelationship between wisdom and compassion. And again, coming from an AI search. So again, this does not come from a particular sutra, but I think gives kind of an interesting explanation of it. Without wisdom, compassion can be blind or ineffective. Without compassion, wisdom can be cold or selfish. So I think that kind of, at least for me, hits the nail right on the head. The two work hand in hand to help us, lead a life where we're wise and compassionate, because one without the other is not the complete, is considered incomplete. So that's my my talk for today. Again, just leaving you with more of a question than an answer. What is the relationship between compassion and wisdom? And again, I don't pretend that any of these quotes definitively answer that question, but sometimes questions are just nice to leave as questions without ever arriving at an answer. And so that's what I have. I'm going to kind of sidestep here a little bit and say that if, and I say this in humor, that if anyone is curious about learning more about the relationship between wisdom and compassion, the Nalanda Institute has a certificate program in wise compassion, where they specifically talk about the relationship between wisdom and compassion. And when I first saw that, I thought, okay, wow, that's something maybe I should look into. Because Nalanda is one of the most famous Buddhist universities that goes back to, I have no idea what the dates are, but let's put it this way. On our pilgrimage to India, we walked through the ruins, and it is a very old and massive university that some of the great Buddhist minds, walked through those same very halls. The Nalanda Institute, though, for this course, their headquarters is on Park Avenue West, which is one of the most expensive pieces of real estate in New York City. And for this certificate program, they charge $3,400. What's up with that? I'm not quite sure. That just kind of tickled my funny bone. Um, but save yourself $3,400. I'm gonna, at some point one of these years, this Dharma talk will be up on the YouTube for free. So again, just this is a question that is perhaps has no answer, but I think a question that's worth contemplating and kind of keeping at the forefront of our minds. Thank you.